Hey everyone, it's Adam. It's been a minute, but I'm back with an update to MixEffect. Let's get started. What's new in MixEffect 2.2.0? In this video, we're going to cover new features, new automations, improvements, bug fixes, and the upcoming NAB Show in 2025 in Las Vegas. So what's new in MixEffect 2.2.0? SuperSource Box Border support, audio routing, hide unused inputs, media enhancements, and preset management improvements. Let's first cover SuperSource Box Borders. Now, this is only supported on certain ATEM switchers, so please follow along as I cover this. So as you can see here, we have a 4-box right here. This is what SuperSource currently looks like if you have many of the ATEM switchers. But now, if you have a supported switchers, you can add box borders. And you can customize and adjust borders for SuperSource boxes in MixEffect 2.2.0, including outer width, the inner width, and the border color. Now, which ATEMs are supporting this new SuperSource box border feature? Currently, it's the ATEM 2ME Constellation HD, the 4ME Constellation HD, the 2ME Constellation 4K, and the 4ME Constellation 4K. So as of March 6, 2025, if you have an ATEM Mini Extreme, a Mini Extreme ISO, or an SDI Extreme ISO, and I believe the Television Studio line has not been updated as well, you do not get SuperSource box borders. Hopefully, Blackmagic will add this feature to the other ATEMs, but as of right now, only Constellations support it. Now, there's also a legacy box border feature. I call it the Legacy SuperSource Borders, and this exists on the older switchers such as the ATEM Constellation 8K and the 2ME Production Studio 4K and the 4ME Broadcast Studio 4K. And these box borders have a few extra options: bevel, outer soften, inner soften, bevel position, bevel soften, shadow. I don't think that these are going to get support for the new SuperSource border. Certainly not the Production Studio 4K or the Broadcast Studio 4K, since those are discontinued switchers. But maybe Blackmagic will update the firmware for the Constellation 8K to add the new SuperSource box border feature. But I'm thinking maybe they won't do it because this version has more features for borders that some of their customers of the Constellation 8K might be using. But anyhow, let's take a look. In ATEM Software Control, you'll have these options here, and it lets you adjust these parameters: the outer width, the inner width, the hue, the saturation, and the luminance. Now, what's important to note is that when you make changes in ATEM Software Control, it applies to all boxes. So Blackmagic has simplified the SuperSource box border feature in ATEM Software Control so that you can just change the borders for all boxes. But in the hardware, it supports setting the box borders for all boxes or individual boxes. And what MixEffect does is it allows you to set individual box border settings. And not only that, you can set the outer width horizontal, the outer width vertical, the inner width left, inner width right, inner width top, inner width bottom, and the border color settings individually. So let's take a look at how this works. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at presets. So SuperSource presets are a very popular feature of MixEffect, and you can now store the box border settings in your presets. And you can also use the Use Box Border feature of a preset to set which boxes should retain box border settings. You can set them to no boxes, which means all the box border settings will be taken from the existing box border settings when you switch between presets. You can say box number 1 should have a set border. Box number 2, 3, 4, or all boxes should have custom border settings that are saved in the preset. In the Art tab for the SuperSource box borders, you have global border controls. This is similar to what you see in ATEM Software Control. So if you make a change to the outer width, it makes a change to all the boxes for that outer width setting. You can also copy and apply settings from one box to all boxes. So let's say you have a custom border setting for box 1, and you have different values for box 2, 3, and 4. You can tap the little one box to apply all the box border settings from 1 to 2, 3, and 4. And you also have macro integration with a Set All Settings button. So if you're recording a macro, you want to record the box border settings for all your boxes, just tap Set All Settings. Now, let's give a SuperSource box demo. So let's go switch over to my iPad here. And I'm going to switch to, and put this in the corner for now. Okay, we see we have these SuperSource Box Borders right here. And I have these looping videos that are playing to demonstrate a real video, but these are just fake videos. Okay, so right here we have the interface for MixEffect. And let's make this a little bit bigger here. And you can see right here, we've also changed a few things with the SuperSource section. I have these little controls here to hide different sections of the interface. Okay, so let's go take a look at the box border controls here. And you can see here, we can adjust which borders we want to apply to the different boxes here. So I'm going to take box number 1 and I'm going to change the outer width to 0. And you can see how the outer width went to 0. We have an inner width set of 0.20. And I'm going to change the color and I'm going to make the inner width a little bit bigger like that. Okay. I'll change the saturation a little bit right there. Then we'll go to box, let's say 3 down here. We'll change the color as well to something like that. Make the outer width even bigger and remove the inner width and change the luminance value. So I'm going to make my iPad a little smaller here. Actually, I'll hide it. And now I'm going to press some presets. So I'm going to move me out of the way. I'm going to just tap some presets to see what it looks like when we switch to different layouts. And you can see the boxes all change like that. Now, the box border settings I have are clearly not what you want to have in a show. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, I like the box border settings for, and I'm going to bring myself back here. I'm going to bring the iPad back as well. And let's just go to the Art tab, and we're going to say, I want to set the box border settings of all boxes to what number 2 looks like. So I'm going to tap number 2 right here, and we see all the boxes get the number 2 setting right here. And I said, okay, the outer width is a little bit too big, so I'm going to make it like, maybe like that. And the inner width I'll set to 0 here. So I kind of like this. And let's say I want to change the color for the box borders and make it a nice little yellow. And there we go. So if I go back to the presets and I tap these presets here, we see they all look very attractive. So you can see how you can use the SuperSource Box Border settings if you have one of those newer ATEMs that support this feature. So I'm just going to tap some of these, tap some of these. Now, as you can see, they are adopting the same SuperSource Box Borders that all the boxes have. But now, let's say we wanted to change the foregrid here, and I'm going to use this duplicate and select to create a new preset. I'll call this foregrid borders, and I'll add a little tag for myself, borders. And I'm going to say use box borders. I'm going to turn that on. And I'm going to say we'll have custom borders for, let's say, 1 and 2. Let's say save. Now we can see that foregrid borders has been selected here. So I'm going to change the border color, and for this one, change to this, and I'll make the inner width a little bit bigger like that. Okay, and make it a little brighter. And then box number 2, I'm going to change this as well. I'm going to make the, let's say, the inner width also that, and I'm going to change the color to that. Okay, now I'm going to save the preset. Just hit Command S, and you see that the thing fixed itself. So now if I go back to here, tap these little boxes, we see that the box border settings are saved. Okay. Now there's also a little icon here. Let me show you this a little bit bigger. This icon right here, which looks like a little box, denotes that this preset has fixed box borders. So let's now create a new preset. I'm going to say duplicate and preset. Call this borders number 2. And I'm going to say this also has use box borders for box 1 and 2. But what we're going to do is we're going to change box 1 and 2, their colors. So let's change the colors to this. And let's make the inner width bigger. And then let's make box 2. It's also a different color. And let's remove the box border for the inner width. So now we're going to save this preset. Now when we switch between 4-grid borders 1 and 2, and I'm going to move the iPad down to the corner, you'll see that the box borders change. So, and if I go here, these don't have use box borders selected so that they stay the same. They adopt whatever box borders are currently active, as you can see here. So if I go to here and I switch to these all retain the box border settings for all of them. But if I go to one that has fixed box borders, that's that. So it's very similar to use box sources, but with box borders. Next, we're going to cover audio routing. Now, what is audio routing? This is called audio output channel mapping in Blackmagic's documentation. And what it does is it lets you route various audio sources into channels in the SDI video output. Now, this is useful when recording to things like a hyperdeck, because then you can send additional audio channels to the hyperdeck. Then when your audio engineer gets the recording for the hyperdeck, they can extract individual audio sources. Now, with great power comes great responsibility. It's very easy to mess things up if you don't know what you're doing. And this is probably why, if you look in ATEM software control, the audio routing features are somewhat simple. You can basically just set all the audio channels to a single input source, okay? But what you can do, and I'm going to show you, is you can actually route these audio sources to any channel on any output, okay? Now, audio routing is only supported on certain switchers, including the ATEM Constellation 8K, the 1ME Constellation HD and 4K, the 2ME HD and 4K, the 4ME Constellation HD 4K, and the new Television Studios HD8, HD8 ISO, and 4K8. So if you have something like an ATEM SDI Extreme, you do not have audio routing as of March 5th, 2025. Again, maybe this will change, but it's up to Blackmagic to implement these features. Now, in MixEffect 2.2.0, there's a new audio routing section. You may have to reset the layout in your switcher connection entry to see the audio routing, but you can also access the audio routing from switcher settings, audio routing. And I'll show you this in my demo shortly. There's 3 views: a select view, a cross-point switcher, and a bulk actions view for audio routing. So speaking of the demo, let's go to the demo right now. Okay, we're going to leave the SuperSource and we're going to go to audio routing. So if you don't see audio routing, what you can do is you can go to your switcher connection entry and tap reset layout, and then the audio routing will appear. I'm going to delete it here and I'm going to hit reset layout and you'll see it appear right there. The other way you can get to it is if you go to switcher settings, you can go audio routing. Okay, and there you have it right there. Now again, if you're connected to an ATEM that does not support audio routing, let's say the ATEM Mini Pro right here. So I'm going to connect to this device here. We go to settings. We see there's no audio routing section, and there's no audio routing section that will appear here. But we're going to connect back to our ATEM 2ME Constellation HD, and we have audio routing here or right here. So here is the select view. Basically, you can select which output, and these are the SDI outputs on your switcher. And I can choose, okay, aux1, aux2, aux3, all the way up to aux12, because the 2ME Constellation HD has 12 outputs. And you can see on aux1, channels 1 to 2, it's sending out program, no audio for channels 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And on 13, 14, it's sending engineering talkback and production talkback. And that's the same for all of these channels. That's like the default. So when I said that with great power comes great responsibility, the first thing I would recommend that you do is that you record a macro that sets the default settings for your audio sources so that you can recall it at any time. So I'll show you how to do that. You can go to the macro section and actually have a default audio sources or default audio routes macro already, but I'm going to re-record the macro. Okay, we'll see our little macro interface appear. I'm going to go to audio routing and I'm just going to click this set all settings. And this will set all the settings for all the aux outputs and all the channels and which input sources are assigned to those. So I'm going to say stop there. So now if I do some changes here, I'm going to say, I'm going to change this to this. I'm going to change this to this, change this to this. So now that kind of like screwed up my audio. because I'm just playing around and I'm like, oh crap, I need to go change them back to the default. I can go back to the macros, hit this button, go back to audio routing, and you can see everything is back to normal here. So the select view allows you just to change one output, audio output, or auxiliary output with all the different things. Now the cross-point switcher, on the other hand, lets you see a more visual representation of all the audio input sources on the left-hand side and all the audio channels for a given auxiliary output. So you can see here, no audio. Again, it's very similar to this view here, except you can see all the input sources all at once, except in a menu. And we have program here, and we can even mix the aux mixes into these things here. You can go here, 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 here. So it's a very easy way for you to change the inputs. You just have to click on which ones you want. Boop, boop, boop. Change that like that. And I'll reset the audio channels because I think aux 5, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, aux 5 isn't being used right now, but my hyperdecks are actually being routed to either HD1 or HD2. So I actually didn't want to change the audio for those because that might affect this video that you're watching right now. Finally, we have the bulk actions, and this allows you to assign a particular input to all channels or specific channel on all aux outputs or specific ones. So this is a way if you want to just set everything all at once, you can do that right here. So I made it very easy for you to use the audio routing features that are built into the new ATEM switchers in a more powerful way than the existing controls in ATEM software control. Next up is hide unused inputs. So ATEM Mini Extreme, 8 inputs, a 2ME Constellation HD, 20 inputs, and a 4ME Constellation 4K has 40 inputs. What if you don't use all of those inputs? You still have all those buttons in the switcher interface, and you may accidentally mishit some of those buttons, or maybe you never use the color buttons or the black button in your switching. What if you wanted to hide them? That's what the hide unused inputs feature does. And the way you do it, I'll show you in a demo, is first you go to the edit switcher connection page, then you enter the numeric ID of the import source you want to hide, and you can find these IDs in switcher settings, source labels, all. I'll show you that in the next slide. In this one example, we've hidden inputs 5, 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 on my Constellation HD. So now I only have 8 inputs visible. So it's like using an ATEM Mini Extreme. So let's quickly go to a demo of this. Come back to my iPad here, and we will go to, first I'm going to show you in switcher settings, source labels, all. You can see the numeric ID right here underneath each of the source. And this is the number that you'll be entering into your switcher connection detail page. Okay, so if you want to hide like black, that's 0. So let's go over here. And first I'm going to actually show you the buttons. So we can see these are the buttons here. We have bars, color, color 1, and then black is down here. Okay, so let's actually hide bars, color 1, color 2, black, and then this 5D4. Okay. So again, I don't remember what bars and color is. So I'm going to go take a look in source labels and scroll down. Color 2001, 2002, and bars is 1000. So now we go down here, we can say edit, and down here we have hidden inputs. I'm going to say 0 for black, 1 for input 1, 1000 for color bar, 2001 for color 1, 2002 for color 2. And for good measure, let's just also hide 17, 18, and 19. So I'm going to say save. And now we can see here a list of the hidden inputs. So since we're connected to the ATEM, we see what inputs are hidden. So black, Mark 5D Mark 4, color bars, color 1, color 2, and the 3 cameras at the end. And we can see here in my switcher section here for the program and preview, I don't have buttons for black right here, or the colors, or camera 1, or the 17, 18, and 19 input sources. So this is really useful. Again, if you have something like an ATEM Extreme and you're only using 5 inputs and you don't want to see those 3 inputs, you can just hide them. And if you have something like a Constellation 4ME with 40 inputs and you're only using like 15 of them, you can hide the other 25. So it's right down here again in the hidden input section. So since I do use these inputs, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to say save, go back to my switcher section, and we see all the buttons are back right now. Next, we have media enhancements. So this is very exciting. I've switched first to a grid view for media stills. So it's a little more visually appealing. I finally added alpha transparency support. So you can now upload images with transparent backgrounds. And you can drag and drop stills to the media still slots. So alpha transparency support. Finally, upload images with transparency. This is perfect for keying. So for use with the downstream keyers or the upstream keyers. Now, it does require a very stable connection to the ATEM, because if the connection drops during upload, it could leave the ATEM in a locked state, which requires a restart. So I highly recommend using an Ethernet connection when you are using MixEffect and you're uploading images. Just keep that in mind. Drag and drop still uploads. So this is optimized for split view and stage manager on the iPad. And again, a stable connection for the ATEM is recommended. So let's give a demo of this. So here we have our iPad. I'm going to go to the media section right here, and we can see our new grid view. And you can change the grid view back to the list view the way it is before. And you can also now hide empty stills. This is kind of how the interface looked like before, or you can show the still slot. This is good if you're dragging and dropping. Dragging and dropping is currently only supported within grid view. And I moved the capture still button up to the upper right-hand corner. You can also still upload using this little plus button, and it'll give you the warning about resizing images and rare instances of uploading is still causing a switcher connection, disconnect. I say, okay. So you can always go back to here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into Stage Manager, and I'm going to bring in photos here. And let's actually make this side by side. Kind of make this like this. And I just did a search for logos. So let's go put a logo. Let's put this little shortcuts logo. I'm going to drag it into slot 23 and it gets uploaded there. I'll put, let's say this little app clip for my other app, wipe my screen over there. And let's find a MixEffect logo if I can. Let's see. I think I have a MixEffect logo here. MixEffect logo. There we go. I'm going to move this guy also here because I'm going to use that as a downstream keyer and put that over there. So now we're going to go back to MixEffect and we're going to go full screen, and I'm going to right click on here. I'm going to say set this as media player 2. Okay. So now in the downstream keyer section, I'm going to say downstream keyer 2, media player 2. I'm going to say auto. And we see down there, right in the corner right here, there is my downstream keyer. Now I'll hide my iPad so you can see it right there. I'll hit the auto on air and the auto button. You can kind of make it go away like that. So let's also set the media for one of these other images. I'll choose this one. I think this was the shortcut one. So I'll go here, I'll set this to media player 2. And you can see the shortcut icon is now playing full screen up here. Images are resized to fit the video mode of your switcher. So this is a 1920 by 1080 size image. And then we can go look at the other one, which is this one here. There's a little bug here where you control click. Sometimes you don't see the set media player buttons. If you go back here, sometimes they appear. Let's make this hide. There, you see this set media. So I'll fix this in the next version of MixEffect. So I'll set this to that. There's my little app clip, and I'll go back to here. So this is really cool. If you're using something like Keynote to create lower third graphics, you can now import them with alpha transparency directly into your media stills and use them in your shows. All right, now we're going to cover improvements to presets management. I covered this a little bit earlier when I was talking about SuperSource Box Borders, but there's now right-click support from the presets tab on the presets bar. Before you had to long press to edit a preset, but now you can right-click. This is if you're on Mac OS or if you have a mouse or trackpad attached to your iPad. Makes things very convenient to do. Box borders and lock borders, I already mentioned that. Duplicate and select preset, I demoed that earlier. It's very easy now to find duplicate presets because they're already selected as the current preset. And duplicated presets also retain box border settings. And finally, on macOS, I fixed a bug where you couldn't import preset JSON files into MixEffect, and now that bug has been fixed. And I'll quickly show this demo real quick. So we'll go back to SuperSource section. So now I'm going to hover over foreground. I'm going to just right click. So before you had to long press and bring up that menu, but now you can just right click. And you can see the duplicate and select. And in the edit preset, we have the use box borders setting right here. Oh, one more thing. It's important to note that I'm not currently animating box borders when you go from one preset to another preset. And I did that by design because I found that the change in box border widths and colors as they're moving could be a little jarring for the user. But I do have a way to animate the box borders, and I'll show you that later. So that's the presets management. And then also in SuperSource, there's improvements in the view here where I have this kind of bar that lets you toggle between the different kind of controls you want to see. And I'm using the split view controller on this iPad. Normally the interface looks like this, but you can also choose the sources like this, this, or this. So if you're only dickering with the borders, you can just see the borders. If you want to see the box border controls, they're there, or just the sources, they're there too. So MixEffect's SuperSource presets page is highly configurable and it'll work the way you want it to. Next up, new automations. So I've added a few shortcuts and OSC actions to MixEffect 2.2.0. For shortcuts, there's set SuperSource Box Border, get SuperSource Box Border, set hidden inputs. And these shortcuts are only available on iOS 16 and higher. So if you're still running MixEffect on an iOS 15 device, you're out of luck. Time to upgrade. And for OSC, I've added SuperSource Box Border, SuperSource Box Border Enable, SuperSource Box Border Parameter Adjust, SuperSource Box Border Parameter Set, and T-Bar Adjust. So with the SuperSource Box Border Adjust parameters and set, you're able to set the individual settings on a per box basis or for all the boxes, and that allows for animation. In OSC feedback, the SuperSource art, fill, and key are now being sent, and future plans are to add box border to feedback and audio routing. I wasn't able to get those into the MixEffect 2.2.0 release. Now, let's cover other improvements in MixEffect. I already mentioned the right-click support. Switcher connection ID is now displayed in the switcher connection detail page. There's more precise video follows audio hold settings. You can now support fractional seconds for finer control, and you can support a hold setting for less than 1 second. Finally, there's enhanced ATEM detection on the network. Blackmagic, when they updated the ATEM television studio line, they changed the way ATEMs were detected on the network. So at one point, MixEffect could see all the ATEMs on the network, but then after the firmware was updated, they disappeared because all the new switchers were using the new method. So I updated that. And actually, let's go show you how that works. So let's come back to here. And first thing we're going to show you is the switcher connection ID. So it is right here, this ID. And this ID is used to identify where the video follows audio settings are in iCloud Drive. So if you go to iCloud Drive in the Files app, iCloud Drive, MixEffect, switchers, you'll see a bunch of folders with a bunch of IDs. And you open up the one with this ID and you'll see kind of video follows audio settings for that switcher. Over on the SuperSource, again, right click to bring up the editing menu. Video follows audio. So I'm not going to turn on video follows audio, but I'm going to edit, say, this one here by clicking here. And you can see now that the hold, I can now specify, less than a second or seconds with fractions. So I'm going to just keep this at 2.0. Actually cancel. And then enhance ATEM network detection. I'm going to click plus, new ATEM switcher, and we can see already these two switchers that are on the network right now. All right, let's talk about bug fixes in MixEffect 2.2.0. Persistent switcher connections. So there was a bug where if you had two windows of MixEffect open, say you connected first to an ATEM Constellation 2ME, and then you connected your other window to an ATEM Mini. Then in the ATEM Constellations window, you switched over to settings. And when you finished changing your settings, you went back. It would actually connect to the ATEM Mini because that was the last connection that you were connected to. So now MixEffect will remember which switcher connection the window was associated with. So if you're in, again, the Constellation, go to settings, go back, it'll reconnect to the Constellation instead of the Mini. More reliable HTTP feedback, so improved communications with BitFocus Companion. I mentioned before the macOS preset import fix. You can now import these files on macOS without any problems. Finally, offline App Store receipt validation. There's actually 4 different versions of MixEffect on the app stores. One of them is MixEffect free to download with the 30-day trial and the in-app purchase to unlock Pro. That's the one with the icon that you see up here, the green, red, white, and black icon. And there's also MixEffect Pro, which is a paid upfront version of MixEffect on the App Store. And the reason why there's 2 different versions is some users can't use the App Store to download in-app purchases. Their company organization has prevented in-app purchases from being used on their devices. So I have to have MixEffect Pro paid upfront. Most people have experience downloading the free to download version with the 30-day trial. And then they like MixEffect, like you right here, and then they buy the Pro Unlock. And so when you get a new iPad or iPhone or Mac, and you want to get MixEffect again, make sure you download the correct one. So if you bought MixEffect Pro, get the one with the gold icon. If you got MixEffect free to download and got the Pro Unlock, get the one with the green, white, red, and black icon. And then use MixEffect settings, restore purchases to get your purchase receipt. And then once you've restored that, you can use MixEffect in an offline manner when you're not connected to the internet. All right, let's talk about NAB 2025, which is coming up in about a month. So it's happening April 5th through 9th in Las Vegas. And I'm happy to say that MixEffect will be at the NAB Show. I'm coming. I'll be attending. I don't have a booth, but I'll be walking the showroom floor, the booths in the expo hall, and attending a few of the sessions. I'll be there from April 6th to 8th. So if you're around, let's connect. Drop me a comment down below or send me an email if you'd like to meet up. I'd love to see MixEffect customers from around the world and hear how they're using MixEffect in their own shows. And those are all the features in MixEffect 2.2.0. I know this is a long video, and I thank you if you reached to the very end. We've covered a lot of ground, including SuperSource Box Borders, audio routing, hiding unused inputs, changes to the media section, and updates to presets management. If you are using a Constellation HD or 4K, I really think you're going to love SuperSource Box Border support in MixEffect. Definitely drop me a comment in the comment section down below on what you think about it. Again, I'm going to be at NAB next month. So if you happen to be in Las Vegas during that time, please leave a comment or send me an email. I'd love to see you there. And until then, and the next video, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.